It's not doing anything.
Jumbo, 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 jumbo. Peace, blessings, alafia, etisang. All the good greetings to the African people, African family. Yeah, I see it. And we're going to rock and roll. We are about 4 minutes behind, but we're going to keep on rolling. It's going to be a very active, informative hour and a half. So let's get busy. I definitely want to, exude that hip hop spirit a little bit more. I was looking at the recording from a couple of weeks ago, and I definitely want to put a lot of the presentation in your hands, Watoto, right? So Baba Kindu is not going to do all the reading and not doing all the talking. I want to make sure you interact. This is a classroom online. So we're going to start off the set. I'm going to do a lot of hip hop lingo too, So we're going to start off this set by doing some pledges. And I like to call pledges are actually like affirmations, okay? And so I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with and it went away as soon as I did that. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the CB Pledge, but we want to start with the CB Pledge, the Council of Independent Black Institutions. And we're just gonna, I know it's not all in sync, but we're going to read and recite this together, right? And Moja, Mbili, Tatu. We are an African people struggling for national liberation. We are visionary leaders and workers to bring about a positive change of our bodies, minds, souls, and conscience. Our commitment to self-determination, our race. The red, the black, and the green. Brothers and sisters are being redeemed. Welcome to open up your eyes and see on our way.
We're on our way to being free.
Gabo.
Yay! Mo. That was called organized confusion. You'll learn about who that is later. All right. So we're going to talk about where hip hop started as far as we know it here in the United States. I want to, let me see. Okay, this is something called the manifesto. I would like, let me pick on somebody. Zion, can you hear us?
Yes.
I want you to read, but in a rapping, rhythmic pattern, manifesto as best as you can.
Okay. Manifesto is what we see happening for the people still breaking graffiti, writing and rapping. I rock my mic, right to the exact life, my sacrifice, take my migrant like the Chinese man with no rice. Oh yeah, we flipping through pages of time and find design like Vaseline to face black children we shining. Deeper in the palm of jelly, we like air, like conversations on celly, it disappear like stretch marks on bellies. After giving birth to, you had to let go your playing for life, the manifesto. Here comes the beat because I said to keep pushing, so I got my cushion for the seat of your soul. Back in the day, we stole our smile and clothed our teeth to gold, and we fronted from Negro to kids to Son of God. It's wild, deepened on the labels in the man, woman, and child. My style is just as it is, all that I've seen and all that I've heard. God just gave us music, so we play with it, with our words.
The manifesto, yes, yes. Yeah. That comes from a longer song. It's a big, long song. It's a very, what we call conscious lyrics. It says a lot in that little, few lines there. Sadaya, when you're reading these words, when you hear Zion spitting these lyrics, what stands out to you? As far as the message that this artist is trying to give.
I was actually still thinking about it, putting it all together. It's a lot, but I think the line that stands out to me the most is to find a design like Vaseline on the faces of Black children be shining. That stuck out to me.
That stuck out to you. Sassier, which one of these lines kind of stuck out to you?
I have no idea.
How about one of the Williams boys? Are you listening?
I was listening.
Well, then find one name. Turn off your mic.
Did any of these lines kind of stick out to you? Is Kadir on?
Oh, I'm sorry. He probably missed that. He was talking to you. Which line stood out to you?
The line that stuck in my mind was, "Take my mic, and I'm like a Chinese man with no rice."
Right. So what is he saying? What is he saying to you? If you take my mic, I'm like a Chinese man with no rice. What do you think about that? What is he saying? Why did he use a Chinese man and rice?
Because rice is important to Chinese culture.
All right. That's one of their staple foods, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. All right. Who else is on? Is Noah on with us today? I don't. Okay, Asasia, you had time to look at this. Anything stuck out to you?
I like the very last line that says, "God gave us music, so we play with our words."
Oh, yeah, yay-bo. That kind of like says it all. To me, it says when you are given a gift, you're given a gift of words. You should use those words, and you should use those words with a purpose. I have a friend that has a song that says, "You are blessed to mic check." If you get that mic, you better have something to say to them because people are listening. I like that. Olashade, is there anything that you see in this little manifesto rap that kind of stands out to you?
I might like the one that is back in the day, they stole our smile, so we clothed our teeth in gold.
Wow, you know what? That's the line that stuck out for me too. Really, it did. You know why? We see a lot of guys, especially guys from like the hood, if you say, and they got these gold teeth. And to some people, we say, "Man, you look ridiculous." The Wu-Tang came out and they had all these gold fronts, is what they call them, right? That's why the next line said, "And we fronting." They're fronting because it's gold fronts. It said back in the day, they stole our smile because our ancestors had to go through so much so that we may be here. They actually gave their blood, sweat, and tears. Sometimes they gave their babies. They gave their freedom, right? They took their freedom, right? So he says, since we have nothing to smile about, right? We clothe our teeth in gold, right? That's just a deep metaphor. Mama in Jamaica, anything that kind of stuck out to you?
After giving birth, you had to let go. You playing for life. I like that.
Yes, Mama. That's what mama would pull those lyrics out, right? Right. So you can relate to that, right, Mama? Right. There's nothing more than we live for is when we give birth to our babies. Mama, like everything that the mother's about is about raising those children, protecting those children, providing for those children, and making that sure that child goes on and be able to repeat the same for their, right? So we're playing for life. Indeed. Indeed.
Excuse me, Daddy?
Yes.
Mama had one.
Oh, Mama had one. What does Mama Adia got?
I liked the line right before Aina and Judeka, and I liked her line too. The one about appearing in the air like Sully and like stretch marks on bellies.
Yeah.
Because the way that it's being declared is like we're always here, we've always been here, we will always be here. And the amount of commitment, like you have stretch marks, you don't go into pregnancy going, oh my goodness, I have stretch marks. And at the end, like you and Aina and Judeka say, you're playing for life. So that's it, you let go, you keep moving. So
There you go. There you go. Yay, bo. Yay, bo. Yay, bo. I am what I say I am. If not, then why would I say I am? That's to me is an affirmation by the what we call the God Rock hymn. He said, "We are whatever we say we are." I hear Denguzo Saba. I hear Kuji Jagalia saying, "We're going to define ourselves. We're going to do for ourselves. We're going to name ourselves, and we'll not let anybody else define, do, or name us." Right? And we're going to define what it means by saying an affirmation, the assertion that something exists or it is true. It's true because I say it's true. It's true because my word is my bond. And when my word is my bond, we have to live up to those words. You have to be about what you talk about. You got to walk it like you talk it, right? Just don't be saying anything. And in real hip hop, we call it keeping it real. You can't just be out here just saying something and talking in first person like it's happening to you, but you really can't relate to it, but it sounds nice, so I'm going to say it anyway. People do that, but the real MCs and the real hip hop is kind of look down on them and frown on them like, you're not keeping it real. That's somebody else's story. If you're going to say or tell somebody else's story, say, hey, I know a guy named Jack. He's selling crack, right? Don't say I'm selling crack when you've never done that. It's not your story, right? We can be storytellers without taking somebody else's story and making it seem like it's our story and then kind of bamboozling everybody, make everyone think I had this hard life, or whatever, and I went through these things. We can still tell stories, right, without glorifying some of the hardships and some of the destitute and things that we see in this world, right? Sasi, I saw your hand up.
I was going to say that I am whatever I say I am. I thought that kind of sounded like Kuji Chagalia to me.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is. I hear that as well. So today, we're going to kind of, there's never enough time to really go through all the annals of hip hop history and culture. And I was telling my wife today, man, maybe I should have made this a 10-week class. Look at Ada. But yes, definitely we want to talk a little bit about the birth of hip hop as we know it in the South Bronx. We're going to talk about some of the political things that was happening in the Bronx in the 70s, late 60s. And then out of that came the Zulu Nation. So we're going to speak about the significance of the Zulu Nation in Africa Bambaataa. And we're going to talk about the Zulu Nation kind of creating a culture of peace that before that it was a culture of war, okay? And we're going to kind of cap it off a little bit with how we started with the manifesto and how that relates and link us back to Mother Africa, okay? And our role as MCs or hip hoppers, okay? You see this picture. This is a picture of some young brothers. I think Ana, she might be able to relate to some of the clothes they got on. It might remind her back in the day when she was growing up, right? Even the car, right? So,
Excuse me.
what do you all notice about the background? The car looks nice. The little fellas, they're dressed nice. The guy got some slacks on and stuff. So, but what do you notice about the background?
I know.
All right, I see 2 hands up, but I want to hear the voice first. Let the voice go first. Who is that? Fine?
Yes. I think they live in like the ghetto, in the hood.
In the ghetto, in the hood, okay. Sadaya, what do you notice?
I was gonna say the same thing. It looks like maybe the project or somewhere in the inner city.
Uh-huh. For Associate, what are you seeing?
I see. It looks like they are the only colorful people and things in the entire picture. Everything else looks gray, white, and black. And I see graffiti on a brick building.
Uh-huh. Okay. Do anybody see any doors or windows?
No.
No.
Are they in the neighborhood?
Okay, Kadir, I heard you saying something. Go ahead.
No, I had a question.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead with your question, Kadir.
I was taking notes during the last slide. Can you go back so I can finish the last sentence?
This one?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you was taking notes. Okay. Well, A9 Indideka is going to actually send this out, so you'll always be able to, review this, okay, and take more notes and absorb it all in and evaluate and analyze. So, okay, so you got your last line?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, okay, so I don't see any windows. I don't see any doors. And that was a great observation, Associé. It's very gloomy and gray in the background. But even through all of that gloomy and gray, these brothers are smiling. Their mothers have dressed them in colorful clothes. Africans always wear colorful and vibrant clothes. And whether we in America or we in Sierra Leone or wherever we at, okay? So, but yeah, this is indeed the ghetto. This is indeed the hood. But this is the ghetto of all ghettos. This is the South Bronx. And the South Bronx in the 60s and 70s, it was a war zone. Hip hop was created out of a war zone. Okay? Sadaya, read this passage here.
The Bronx, New York. Robert Moses was the master builder of the 20th century. New York City, an advocate of a controversial style of urban planning that favored the construction of new highways over the preservation of existing neighborhoods. He had a vision about progress and modernity. His vision was to make New York even bigger than what it was. And one of his ways to do that was to destroy the Bronx neighborhood and build the Cross Bronx Expressway. In other words, he was destructing for improvement.
Wow. Said that he would destroy communities and called it destructing for improvement. Here you see some plans for this thing called the Cross Bronx Thruway, or is also called known as the Cross Bronx Expressway. And he wanted to get backing and money and support to do this thing. But before he can get that money, right, he had to prove that this expressway will bring more money and raise the property value, this, that, and the third, right? So he actually did things to make the community worse so that he can get his the government and his financial backers to give him money and more money to build something up, right? If the neighborhood looked nice and it was vibrant and there was a lot of economic empowering going on, it was like, hey, you don't need that much money. Look, it's already thriving, right? So you have to do something to make it worse. So anytime that folks with money comes into the neighborhood and they try to improve the neighborhood and build a bigger business and up the property value in the neighborhood, we call that the G. What is that word that you might be familiar with? Sadaya.
Gentrification.
Gentrification. Yes. That is the fancy way of saying that we want to kick black folks out. We want to move black folks and brown people out of the neighborhood, okay? There was something called white flight. White flight was meant, there were some neighborhoods that was predominantly with European people, and then when certain black folks or Puerto Ricans or whoever made a little money, they moved into the nice neighborhood. And I remember seeing this myself in Petersburg, Virginia, when my uncle moved into a suburban neighborhood. First time we saw that much grass in somebody's yard. First time I saw somebody with a garage, you know. First time I saw anybody with a swing in their backyard. We used to go to the schoolyard to get on the swing. And I was like, oh, Uncle man, you done made it big, you know. And I said, oh man, you live around a lot of white folks. A year later, 1 year later, this was 1981, there was only one white family on his street. Everybody else had left. And more black folks had moved into the neighborhood, right? So when he was the only black family in the neighborhood, now there was only one white family in the whole neighborhood, right? So it's called white flight, right? So what usually happens years later, 20 years go by, 30 years go by, European folks want to come back, right? And they start this process of renovating deteriorated or so-called deteriorated urban neighborhoods. Urban basically means black folks, okay? And they bring these businesses in, and then they renovate houses or they build new houses, and that drives the taxes up, where some of those black and brown people that used to live there, they can't afford to live there anymore. They raise the rent if they're not owning the house. That's why sometimes owning a house is very important, because they can raise your rent. And if they raise your rent so high, you can't afford to live there anymore, then you have to move out. And pretty soon, the neighborhood changes again, okay? And they invite the affluent people in there, and we basically mean people with a lot of money, folks with a lot of wealth, right? So that basically is saying, hey, it's out with the poor and with the rich, right? Now, when they said that he had to do something to destroy to tear down the neighborhood in order to build it up, for Fawohodie, what do you notice about this picture? What do you see in that picture?
I think I see a house that is burned, a building that is burned actually.
Yes.
And children playing in a basketball court.
Children playing on the basketball court. Zion, why do you think that in the background there are some people that's looking at that building burning? You can see it. And if you look to the right, there's a fireman on the little scaffold thing and the ladders attempting to put the fire out. And if you look at the very top of the building, there's another fireman. And you see these people below are looking up like, wow, you know, they're putting out that fire. Why do you think, with all of that going on, those boys are having a good time playing basketball and not paying attention at all to a building that's on fire? Why do you think?
It's probably because they probably come, like they're visiting a new city and they already seen this a bunch of times, so they're used to it. And or also their own home got bombed, so they don't really care anymore.
Oh, look at that. This is nothing new to them. Their own home probably was bombed and burned down. So they don't care anymore, right? So let me tell you what was happening. You had what you call landlords, people that own these buildings, these tenements, that charge rent to the people that lived in the building. And they got a hold on what Mr. Moses was wanting to do and what was happening to the Bronx. So they would burn their own buildings down in order to get insurance, right? And then the insurance company would say, well, hey, you know, we have to pay you out so much money for all these burned down buildings. We're going to sell all the real estate. We're going to sell the property, right, to outside people that want to come in and gentrify this neighborhood, right? But they would burn the buildings down. And sometimes Robert Moses would pay some of these so-called landlords to burn their buildings down and go into a cohesion with them to split some of the insurance money, right? And they would promise them, you know, a new business in another neighborhood, or hey, when they build up, you're going to get state in this project in the Bronx or whatever. So yeah, there was a whole lot of wheeling and dealing and underhandedness that was taking place. But some of these children, it was so terrible. They just say, hey, it's another day. It's another burned building. Why not play basketball? Right? Can you imagine that happening in your neighborhood and you would ignore it, a building burning down next door to you, you continue just having a good time? I couldn't see that happening. Welcome, Noah. Good to see you, young warrior. Peace. All right. So, Noah, we're talking about gentrification, right? We're talking about how they were bombing buildings in the 70s, in the very early 70s in the South Bronx, New York. The word bombing in New York and hip hop, it kind of means different things, right? The Bronx Bombers, right, was a name or nickname for the New York Yankees, all right? Anybody watch baseball? You got any baseball fans out there?
Yeah.
No, a baseball fan a little bit? Okay. So
Major fan.
the New York Yankees were called the Bronx Bombers, right? And they called them the Bronx Bombers because what we were just talking about. So many houses and buildings were being bombed, burned down, that was just a nickname that the Bronx had, right? They also called them sometimes the New York Burners, right? So they was either the New York Bombers or the Bronx Bombers or the New York Burners. And consequently, it's funny because in hip hop, we talked a lot about graffiti last class, right? In hip hop, when somebody has to throw up some graffiti really fast and they kind of want to color it in, they call it bombing, right? They call it bombing. And when they're doing something that's really elaborate, a lot of colors, a lot of background, it's called a burner. You think in the graffiti world, they could have came up with any other kind of name. But they came up with these names because of what was actually going on in their community. A lot of bombing and a lot of burning. So hip hop being a little rebellious, they're going to, in their mind, they say graffiti to us is beautifying, you know, these buildings. So we're going to take that word bombing and we're going to take that word burning and we're going to add colors to it, right? And we're going to do artwork because art is beautiful. And we're going to change the meaning of bombing and burning because that's what hip hop does a lot. You might today, even today, you might see something that's, oh man, that's nice. That's dope. Well, in my grandmother's time, if you said something was dope, that was not a great word. That meant, hey, you're taking drugs, you're hurting and killing yourself. But nowadays, back in the 80s, we say, hey man, that's dope. And that's one of the old school hip hop slang words that's still around. Here's another building or picture, should I say, of, you know, a bombed out neighborhood. Cars are bombed. You got rubble all over the place left over from a building that probably was there at one time and is burned down and condemned, right? So they had to just destroy the building, and it left a lot of rubble. I recall visiting Philadelphia some years back, a while back, and we were on tour. And we were trying to get directions to the place that we were performing at. And we had our rental van or whatever. And the guy said, yeah, well, take a right on first, take a left on the Rising Sun, and then go down 2 blocks and take another left at the burnt down abandoned car. You know, much like the cars that we see here, burned down and abandoned, being left to just die, and it doesn't work, and it does nothing to beautify your neighborhood or community. It looks terrible. And I thought that was strange that a burned out abandoned car would be a landmark in which people can use to give somebody directions. It's the craziest thing. These things only take place and exist in neighborhoods with Black and brown people, right? You would not see predominantly white neighborhoods left to look like that. So whose job is it? If you live in a neighborhood, whose job is it to make sure that this doesn't happen? Whose job is it to make sure that there are not abandoned, burned down cars and lots full of rubble? Whose job is it? Let me see. Noah. Whose job is it to take care of the neighborhood?
Legally, it will be the cities, but it's actually our job to keep it from burning down, from being destroyed.
It is our job, right? And one of the principles of the Nguzo Saba, Kumba, that tells us that we're going to make our communities and neighborhoods more beautiful than what we had inherited it as. So if the neighborhood is trashy, if, you know, we have to go out there and clean up our neighborhoods and not be dependent and waiting on somebody else to do it for us. Again, I think I hear Kuji Jagalia in that. We got to do for ourselves. So the neighborhoods look terrible. It wasn't a nice place. And one thing that we find out in places that look like crime's supposed to happen, crime will happen, okay? And from living in neighborhoods full of rubble, we got gangs. A lot of gangs started to form. These gangs came about because they was living in a state of hopelessness. But the gangs actually formed to build self-esteem. Kadir, would you read the passage here on this page?
Okay. Gangs from hopeless to self-esteem. Gangs are a conscious product of young people organizing their lives on the streets. They usually begin as unsupervised male or female peer groups within defined urban spaces. Some, but not all, evolve into formal organizations with social, economic, or political functions and may have older members.
Okay, so we see that the one thing that sticks out to me is that it's talking about young people, right? And it says that they're usually unsupervised, male or female peer group. Sadaya, can you imagine what children would be, even the children that live in a house, in a nice neighborhood, in a nice home? You know, can you imagine what it would be like for those young people if they did not have any parents to supervise them? What would that look? What would that be like?
It'd be they'd be confused, lost, and stressed out, because if you don't have like a parent, and you don't know where you're going to get your next meal, you don't have anybody to provide for you while you're underage, you're going to be wondering what to do, and you might turn to things you shouldn't be doing.
Right? You may start turning to things that you shouldn't be doing because you're trying to survive, right? So no children should have to struggle. That's why we have parents, right? So imagine you have a whole community that's living in a community full of rubble. And you see this picture here, and it says the Rubble Kings. They call them the Rubble Kings because they lived in neighborhoods full of rubble. Exactly what it looks like in the former picture, and if you can look at in this picture. They're standing and walking on a pile of rubble. All right, neighborhoods burned down. Look like what people would say Vietnam, a place that's a war place, a place that's been bombed and burned down, and missiles and a lot of destruction, right? So when you don't have any parents, or your parents is not there with you to supervise, you can imagine that you will start to turn to other kids who got this in the same situation that you're in, right? And you got to figure out ways to eat and survive, and you may not make the best of choices, right? And some of those choices would lead you into, you know, a dark path, right? And that's when, you know, people start stealing and using drugs to escape from reality, selling drugs, and they're trying to make money and get food. Some drop out of school and don't go to school anymore and start becoming educated by the streets. This is what was happening in the late 60s, the early 70s, right before hip hop began. And some of these folks, they started to read and learn about politics and what was going on, and they formed social organizations, right? And they got involved in seeing what was happening, and they said, man, we have to do something to make change. Zion, you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Are the Album Kings rappers or poets?
The Rubble Kings here that in this picture, they were gang members, right? They were gang members. Now, we're going to talk later that some of those gang members might have become poets and rappers and dancers and DJs and things of that nature. But before hip hop culture, there was gang culture, okay? And gang cultures did a lot of fighting. You had the Black Spades, the Baby Spades, the Savage Nomads, the Savage Skulls, and they went to war a lot. A lot of people was dying. They did all they could to get guns, knives, things of that nature. When you have a community in destitute that's being destroyed on purpose, right, with people that is hungry for money, looking for financial gain and to become rich off of the backs and the sorrow of poor people, right? This is what created the gangs, okay? And it was such a big thing, they started making movies about it. There was a movie called The Warriors, right? Where the street gang story went to Hollywood, right? When I was young, oh man, I thought this was like the greatest movie. So, because for some reason, young people, we we glorified the gang stuff. We thought it was something powerful about gangs. It was something powerful about people organizing themselves and wearing their names on their back, things of that nature, right? This movie was really huge. This is a picture of a guy that was in a movie. His character name was Osiris. His character name was Osiris. Anybody tell me who is Osiris? Associate?
Osiris is the Greek word for Asar, and Asar is supposed to be the Kemetic king of the underworld.
There's a lot of deities in ancient Kemetic stories, and Osiris, or Asar, as Associate pointed out, is like the head of many of the deities. And it's a very interesting thing that in this movie, this guy, where he looked like a white guy, but I think he's like a so-called Latino, Puerto Rican guy or whatever, that Osiris, he is the one that brings all of the gangs together and said that we have to come in peace, and we're going to go against the government. We're going to go against the city. We're going to be united against the police, you know, and he wanted to be powerful. He wanted the gangs to be powerful. But then there was somebody that set up one of the gangs, and they were called the Warriors from Brooklyn, Coney Island. And so that all of the gangs that Osiris put together now was out to kill the Warriors. And Noah has watched this movie. Wow. Noah, how old are you, Noah? How old are you, Noah?
Huh?
How old are you? 13.
I'm 13.
Okay. Good. Yeah, so when I was a young guy, maybe much younger than Noah, I watched this movie. Now, I don't know if I would let my children watch it. They're a little too young. But maybe when they get a little older, The Warriors is a very significant movie to kind of understand the craziness that was going on in New York. Why are we talking about this? Because hip-hop came out of this story, all right? AP is on. He said he has watched sections of that movie, right? I just thought it was very interesting that this is the figure, this is the image of the people who wrote this movie wanted to give this Osiris title to this guy, where we know Osiris did not look like that guy, looked more like these images, right? We have to be in control of our own image. And even though The Warriors was a very significant movie, it is not a movie or a story that's told by us. It may be about Black and brown people, but the movie was not necessarily directed, written, and controlled by African people. I saw something about Audrice wanted us to watch that movie, but that's a very interesting thing. So when you'll find that Europeans make movies and they will borrow and steal from our story and then change the face of our ancestors and our warriors and then put their face or their images to those stories. Anybody, let's see. Sadaya, do you know or are you familiar with the heading on this particular slide?
I am.
You are?
Am.
Sing it for me. Sing it for me real quick.
Anga lapia ashe ashe. Anga lapia ashe ashe. That's all I know. I don't know the rest.
Good. Anybody else have heard of that song?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Do anybody know what that song means? Or what type of song and dance that is? Go ahead, Sasie.
Is a Nigerian song that means, I think one of Funga Alafia, one of the words is supposed to mean peace, I think. And Ashe is supposed to mean power. I believe so.
Okay, Sadaya, go ahead and elaborate.
I believe it's like a welcoming rhythm. At least that's what my father said. He said it's kind of like a compacted song. Kind of, it takes from different African cultures. Like Ashe is from a Nigerian culture, as we know, and then Funga Alafia. I believe Alafia is either Ghanaian, I believe, or something. But it's like a compilation of African languages in one song that kind of lets African people in the diaspora sing a song that reflects our culture. So I've heard it.
Mo, you're exactly right. I think Funga is I think it's from Guinea or Gambia or something like that. And then Alafia is peace in the Yoruba, and Ashe is power. And it is a welcoming song. So the reason why I have this up there, because the picture of this guy right here is Africa Bambaataa. And the first time that I've heard that song was in a song that he made way back in the very early 80s. And he said, Renegades, Funga, Alafia, Ashe, Ashe. And the beat was going, and it was hip hop, and it had this little drum to it. And I was like, oh man, this is dope. And it sounded like warrior music. And then fast forward, I was a kid. I was really young then. I was a mtoto. Now I became maybe 30 years old. I hear Africans doing African dance, singing this song. And I'm like, my introduction to this song wasn't in a African context. It was in a hip hop context. But little did I understand that hip hop is African in modernity. And it came from across the seas, and it looks different. So the whole point of hip hop, the African continuum, and Tool for Liberation is to show you guys how hip hop is a direct link, and it follows the direct lineage from our African culture, right? And Africa Bambaataa was aware of this song. Why was he aware of this song? Who haven't I got to read yet? Asasie, why don't you read this slide about Africa Bambaataa?
After Bambaataa won an essay contest that earned him a trip to Africa, his worldview shifted. He had seen the movie Zulu and was impressed with the solidarity exhibited by the Zulu in that film. During his trip to Africa, the communities he visited inspired him to create one in his own neighborhood. He changed his name to African Bambaataa Asim, adopting the name of the Zulu chief Bambatha, who led an armed rebellion against unfair economic practices in early 20th century South Africa. He told people that his name was Zulu for affectionate leader. Bambaataa formed the Bronx River Organization as an alternative to the Black Spades.
So the Black Spades was one of the most notorious gangs in the South Bronx back in the late 60s and the early 70s. He changed the Black Spades when he got a little older, because he was with the baby Spades, meaning he was too young. Then as he got older, and his mom and his uncle were political activists. They was into like the Black Panthers and things of that nature. So he grew up hearing all of this conscious talk, this pro-Black talk, this political consciousness. And as he got old enough and he started to take himself away from the gang activity, he thought, man, we could do better. We can make a political statement. See, something was happening with the gangs. And there was a guy who was killed, who was trying to bring a gang truce and peace amongst the gangs. I think his name was Karate Joe. And Karate Joe was murdered. And everybody knew the work that he was trying to do to bring about peace. And when they saw that even though no matter how hard that Karate Joe and his friends was working to bring about peace, he died anyway. And then his gang members came to his home to consult his mother. And they was like, ma'am, we're going to get revenge for Karate Joe, right? And she said, no, do not do that. He died for peace. Do not go out here and return violence for violence. And they listened to Karate, I think his name was Karate Joe, Karate something. And they listened to his mother. And they decided, we're going to carry on the work of our fallen brother. And we're going to bring about peace. We're going to get knowledge of self, because we didn't get in this situation by ourselves. We're going to analyze how we got here, and we're going to do something to improve our communities. And they started doing that. They were encouraged by the stories and the work of the Black Panther parties and how it was spreading across the United States. And they wanted to say, look, we can do something better than fighting and killing each other. And you know what started to happen from that? Hip hop was born. Hip hop was born based on activities, the creative minds of three gentlemen. The one in the middle that we were talking about is Africa Bambaataa. The one on the left is Grandmaster Flash. He took the art of DJing to another level. And the guy on the right, he is considered the godfather, the creator of hip hop, DJ Kool Herc. He is the very first person to start DJing parties and extending the break to make the break or the best part of the record repeat over and over again. And notice that the B-boys love to dance to that part of the record. The gangs in New York pretty much consisted of Black and Puerto Ricans. Sometimes they were against each other, but then they started to come together, okay? In this, you see a picture of a young Puerto Rican girl. She's breakdancing. And there's a guy that's looking like, yeah, go ahead, you got the moves. Those moves of breakdancing and B-boy and B-girl would not exist if it wasn't for, I think these guys' name was Kenneth, Kevin. They were called the twins. They was called the N twins. I like to say they were the Nubian twins. But these are the first guys that started break dancing on the floor, okay? And they were part of the Zulu nation. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this or you can get with that. You can get with this, but this is where it's at, right? At one time, the gangs, what was that? Black Sheep? Yes. At one time, the gangs were fighting, going to war, hurting each other, killing each other. Then they said, you know what? We can still battle, but we're going to battle using an art form. And that art form was called b-boy, right? And you can see a couple of pictures here where they are in b-boy battles. They will really go for each other, seeing who can outdo, who had the best moves, okay? And who can do the best backspins, who had the best floor work or floor rock or top rock. That means when you stand up and you dance, right? So instead of going at each other with knives and guns, fighting over territory, the names of all these crews or gangs like the Black Spades, the Savage Skulls, they started to adopt new names, right? They became the Magnum Force. They became the Lords of the Floor, or the Floor Rockers, or the New York City Breakers, or the most popular group, the Rocksteady Crew, right? And this was all based on the organizing and the preaching of peace and organizing and doing something better from Africa Bambaataa. Africa Bambaataa wasn't the one that started DJing first or created the beat juggle or looping the record. And he wasn't as good as Grandmaster Flash, but he was a great organizer. And understand that he started from hearing the stories and the debates between his uncle and his mom, who were part of affiliated with the Black Panthers and the Black Liberation Army and things of that nature. Okay? All right, moving right along. On the left, look at Africa Bambaataa. He got on his African garb, right? He got on his African medallions, but he got those crazy glasses on, right? Because back then, funk was such a big thing, big deal. I don't know if Mama Indijaka is still on, but I bet she was a fan of Parliament, Funkadelic, and George Clinton.
So high,
Back in the
can't get over it.
Uh-oh.
So low,
Hey,
can't get under it.
can't get over it.
Anyway, yeah.
I hear you, Mama. I hear you. Yes. Funk music that was given to us from James Brown, and that was hurled forward and perpetuated into a massive mainstream was George Clinton, Parliament, and the Funkadelic. And they wore these far out crazy outfits and costumes. And people like Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force group, they would emulate what they saw George Clinton and Parliament was doing. And as you can see on the left, this is Africa Bambaataa and Soul Sonic Force. WizKid, Globe, and Jazzy J, they would dress kind of weird, kind of look like the Village People. And if you never heard of the Village People, you can Google them and see some of the far out costumes they used to wear. And Audio, I see you back there. Do you recognize the picture of the guy with the long nose on the right?
Yes, but I can't remember his name.
How about Mama Indijaka? Do you remember that guy's name?
I forgot to.
Yeah, this was one of the characters of George Clinton, and he was called Sir Nose, the boy of funk.
Oh, yeah.
I would never dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we loved that stuff back then, man. And it was just, you know, the way that hip hop had just grabbed hold of everybody. For my uncles and my father, it was funk music and Parliament and Funkadelic, right? So you really saw the influence that George Clinton had on hip hop. But then something changed. When a group called Run DMC came out, the costume or the type of clothes that hip hop wore, it changed. It went from the old school to the new school. So the picture on the left is the same guys as in the other picture, Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. And they said, yeah, we got to take that crazy costumes off and kind of dress more like everyday people would dress. Because it's all about keeping it real, as you remember what I was saying. Okay? Let's see who have not read a passage yet. Zion? No, let me see, Kadir. Has Kadir? No, Kadir read. Let's get JP. Are you on, JP? Can you turn your mic on and read this particular slide?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Let's see. Run DMC is largely credited as one of the first rap groups to hit the stage and their records covers wearing the uniforms of the streets. Prior to their arrival, hip-hop kids had largely adopted the B-boys style, tracksuits and Pumas or Adidas, either unlaced or with fat laces, but the vibe on stage was different. Groups like Africa Bambaataa, the Soul Sonic Force, and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five had embraced a funky earth, wind, and fire aesthetic. It ended up feeling and looking like they were still strapped in the old school of thought, rather than appearing in costumes, looking like they just deboarded a spaceship. Run DMC sported leather jackets, Lee jeans, and Adidas Superstars. The way the kids on the streets did it.
Exactly. So Bambaataa and them changed, and when Run DMC came in, it ushered in a whole new style, a whole new era. Word, sound, power. Fawohodie, you want to read this slide?
You got to hold on. Mm-hmm.
It's stuff that I've heard, but I never.
The whole thing?
I've never seen anyone lined up with it.
Yes, the whole thing.
It's like the stuff next to this stuff.
What you know about Nomo?
Yes, Nomo.
Nomo, we use words and sound. It's a powerful thing, so gather around and think that this beat is in sense with the way your heart pound. You gotta get up to get down.
Yes, you gotta get up to get down, right? This is from lyrics from a guy named Jay Rawls and Asheru. Asheru is the actual, he's the MC. Jay Rawls is the producer. And this is from a song called No More. Is there anybody that is familiar with that word no more? Anybody? Oh, Sadaya, tell me what you know about that particular term.
So I know that there's the creation story of the Dogon. And in that creation story, there are the Nomo. And from what I know, they are fish-like beings who contributed to the creation of the universe. And
Yebo. Yes. Yes. You have been studying well, Grasshopper. As we've talked about, Africa had an oral tradition. For many, many years, we didn't feel the need to write everything down. We passed on our stories, our knowledge and wisdom through the tongue from generation to generation. And many times this was done through the griot, or what we said we like to call the jali. Also from that same song, the Nomo, Asheru says, wise beyond my years, I've been told by my peers, but I'm only just a kid in my primal years. Okay? He said that he was only a youth, but he was hurling such strength and such a power of words, understanding that when you say something, you're giving off this energy, a very ashe energy, a powerful energy. It is the job of the griot or the jolly, be the historian, the advisor, the spokesperson for the chief sometimes. They're diplomats, meaning they settle disputes between families or villages. They're peacemakers and praise singers. Oftentimes, they got to know different languages to interpret for folks that speak a different language. Translators, musicians, composers, teachers, warriors, and witnesses. A griot is sometimes called a jali and mali. Both men and women can be griots. The Rapping Duke or the Rapping Dogon. The Rapping Duke was a song by this white guy who thought that rap was not only a fad, but it won't be around long. So he wanted to capitalize off it. And he did this song. He was a comedian. I forgot his name. That went da ha, da ha, da ha 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 ha. And he used to rap like John Wayne. Does anybody beside the adults know who John Wayne is? If the answer is no, good. You really don't need to know. But next week, we're going to talk about the significance of the Rapping Duke and John Wayne as it relates to some of the lyrics from Public Enemy. All right? The Rapping Dogon, as Sadaya had explained to us, and I'm going to let's see. I want to let the elder read this passage. Mama Inda Jacob, would you like to read this slide?
Ane. The Rapping Duke or the Rapping Dogon. While rap's history appears brief, its relation to the African oral tradition, which provides rap with much of its current social significance, also roots rap in a long-standing history of oral historians, lyrical fetishism, and political advocacy. At the heart of the African oral tradition is the West African ideal of Nomo. In Malian Dogon cosmology, Nomo is the first human, a creation of the supreme deity Amma, whose creative power lies in the generative property of the spoken word. As a philosophical concept, Nomo is the animative ability of words and the delivery of words to act upon objects, giving life. The significance of Nomo in the African oral tradition has given power to rappers and rap music within many African American communities.
Yes. The rapper or the MC, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is more than somebody just putting words together. They're supposed to serve the of the Jali. It is about youth empowerment. Zion, if you are still with us, read this slide, please.
It's about youth empowerment. Rap and hip hop has been criticized because of the misogyny, violence, and materialistic. Not all hip hop fits that category. In fact, the commercial rappers we hear on the radio and see throughout the media constitute less than 1% of the genre. Indie rappers.
That's good. That's good right there. So what that is saying, that's very significant. It says that the music that we hear on the radio and see on television and throughout various forms of media only constitutes less than 1% of hip hop genre. Remember last week we said that hip hop is bigger than the music? There's different ways that hip hop is being expressed and manifested. And we talked about some of those ways. We're going to look at some other ways. There's a lot of independent rappers and their local artists that they're not just rapping, they're actually trying to make change. The elements that spring from a disenfranchised culture build a community through its common concerns and is preserved in the local hip hop culture that spans from local communities throughout the world. Okay? Remember, we are talking about keeping it real. And by keeping out the commercial qualities that might overtake the social value of the community, coming together is the quest to end disenfranchisement, okay? To end the false perceptions of what hip hop is, to destroy the propaganda that hip hop is negative. That's all we hear. I told you I debate a lot with some of the elders, even though I agree with them. The point is there's another side, and we are going to talk about the other side. So I'm going to fly through these pretty quick here. Young people organize all over the world, and a lot of it is through some of the actions and the organizations of the Universal Zulu Nation that was started by Africa Bambaataa. Here we see the Zulu Nation's logo, right? But then there are different chapters of the Zulu Nation. There's chapters all over the world. There's chapters in Brazil, You see here, there's chapters in San Jose. There's chapters in Belgium, you know, like over there in Germany. There's chapters in Tokyo, Africa, everywhere, right? And these chapters are usually facilitated, organized, and operated by the youth, young people anywhere from 25 years old to 12 years old. Understand that Africa Bambaataa was a young person. He was not an adult. He was not a father. Africa Bambaataa lately has been getting a lot of bad press, and we found out he had a lot of skeletons in his closet. So understand, we're not praising Africa Bambaataa, right? We are understanding that anybody that creates something good, that good overshadows that individual. I hear a lot of bad things about Malana Karenga, one of the creators of Kwanzaa. But Kwanzaa has taken its own energy and it's become its own force. And it's something that has given us a sense of empowerment and to live the life, the words, the legacy of our African ancestors. So the Zulu Nation has actually distanced themselves from Africa Bambaataa, but still going on strong. So this is proof that if you ever have one leadership and one person in leadership and you cut the head off the snake, the body of the snake dies. The Zulu Nation was empowering young men and women to be leaders and not to follow a leader, okay? Diversity, multiculturalism, appropriation equals the takeover. Here you see the sister holding up the Zulu Nation medallion. That's one thing I used to love about the Zulu Nation. They was rocking the African medallion, the red, black, and green. They used to have a fist on the medallion and say Black Power. I'm like, man, that is great. I want to be down with the Zulu Nation. But as I got deep into it and started reading the philosophies, and a lot of the philosophies of the Zulu Nation sound like the nation of gods and earths, I noticed that it was like it started to become a rainbow coalition, right? And as you can see, as we follow the arrow, it's okay. Hip hop is kind of a thing that bring all races together. And you know what? That's okay, right? Because it's about peace, love, unity, and having fun. But as it follows the arrow and it spreads around the world, what we find is that sometimes when we sharing our gifts and we sharing our art and we sharing our culture with other people of the world, there's a certain segment of people on the world that are very parasitic. Do you understand what when I say parasitic? Mean they find a host and they feed off that host and they take it over. And if you follow the arrow, look at the picture of the hip hop kids at the bottom right-hand corner. A lot of times you will find that the people that are being the most authentic and true to the elements and culture of hip hop, they don't look like you and I anymore, right? Because most Black folks, Africans, fall victim and prey to the propaganda machine. We believe that hip hop is what is on television, where we know that the real art and real culture is always grassroots with the people that's in the community from which that art form and that culture comes from. Sometimes when things get too commercial or too big, we lose it. This was what I saw happening during 1988-89 when Yo MTV Raps came out. I call it the gift and the curse. Yes, it was cool that hip hop is now being projected throughout the globe. But when it starts getting into any and everybody's hands, they feel like it belongs to them too. And they forget about the people that created it, and they forget about the legacy and the cultural connection to the motherland. This is simply what happens. That is why sometimes and oftentimes we must hold our culture sacred. We must have sacred space, and we must have time for us to shut the door and talk to us, just amongst us. to practice our art with us and to teach it to our children so that they would teach it to their children and their friends and their cousins, and then we hold it sacred. Hip hop was totally a Afrocentric thing for a long time. You saw the clothes the Africa Bambaataa was wearing. He had on his African garb. Things started to change. Last week, A9 Jacob said, why do we have a picture of this person with all those white folks in the crowd? And I had to explain to her that that's an African sister with the mic. It is this sister named Rhapsody that we see here from North Carolina. But we do notice that the more conscious your lyrics are, the more positive your songs are. For some reason, Europeans love positivity. They love all that hip hop swag, that hip hop vernacular. They say, hey, Black folks are cool. They get all this style and swag. We're going to go check it out. You ever see your parents or anybody go and learn salsa? And salsa is a Afro-Cuban dance that comes from the islands and some of what we call Afro-Latin world in South America and Central America and through the islands. Well, I know a lot of European folks that go learn that dance too. And in a year or two, they're opening up their own studios and they're teaching salsa. The same thing happens to hip hop, okay? Because they come. Let's look at the lyrics of Rhapsody. She says, Associate, read this rap right here.
Look, don't worry about anything they told you. Remember what she said about winter and what the cold do. Everything's a season and some things you gotta go through. Believe me, I don't see it all. You're too young, talking to the old you. When haters come around, look them down and tell them we don't owe you. You gonna lose some friends, but those circles are better than the ovals. A black man left the oval. Keep that style you got soulful. The best of the best gonna fear you. Sky's the limit. See, I told you.
Powerful, beautiful words of wisdom. This is a song that's called Layla's Wisdom, who's a grandmother telling her these things, and she is sharing this in a song to the world. Rhapsody, for the first time after being out for like 5, 6, 7 years, was nominated for a Grammy. The first time, right? This last album she just came out with a couple of months ago, it's not better than any other of her records, but we got to stick in there and just kind of keep grinding and people will start to recognize you. But you know what happened? Black folks was recognizing, but when white folks started recognizing her, as you see in the crowd, she started to get this attention from the mainstream. But still, she is basically unknown to the mainstream. A lot of people do not know who Rhapsody is. But guess what? The more garbage your lyrics are and trashy your lyrics are, for some unforeseen reason, the audience becomes blacker and blacker. As you see here, Cardi B, and I'm pretty sure, no matter how conscious and cultural we are, pretty much most of us have heard of Cardi B. Why? She is in the mainstream. She's winning all the Grammy Awards. She's on all the talk shows. She's on all the television programs. She's on the covers of all the magazines, right? It was very hard for me to find pictures where she had some clothes on. You look at her lyrics here. They are totally contrast to the lyrics of Rhapsody. I don't even want to read these lyrics, and I had to change some of the words, right? Not to expose the Watoto to such crazy mess. But look at her audience is what I want you to see. It's a very stark difference than Rhapsody's audience. Those audiences are our cousins, our uncles, our neighbors, some of our friends from the community center, and that we see at the grocery stores, that we see at the daycare when they're picking up the little brothers and sisters or whatever. Our people are drawn to the flashy and sometimes the worst of us. And for whatever reason that we can talk about another time, Europeans, they are attracted to the best and the worst of us. But unfortunately, not enough of us are attracted to the positive stuff. True school hip hop is a form of intergenerational transmission. We see that Africa Bambaataa, his name was Lance Taylor, right? He went to Africa and brought his name back. The Zulu Nation was called the Black Spades, a notorious gang that spread terror through the South Bronx. And now they became an organization of peace, love, unity, and having fun. I first heard the word intergenerational transmission through Nana Akua and Baba Akoto. It is defined as the passing of tradition and culture from one generation to the next that furthers the survival of their people and the perpetuation of their cultural reality. I gave you all this word to kind of look up and define for yourself. Mama Adia gave me this definition because it's so hard to really define that word sometimes when we are dealing with reality. But when we put ourselves in an African resistance and an African reality, we can see that it's our job as parents to pass on values, morals, and tradition to our children so that they may pass it on to their children and we keep nation building. It's not all going to happen in a short time. Zion wants me to make him the presenter. Zion, why do you want me to do that? Zion?
That's a mistake.
What happened?
Huh?
What happened?
He pushed something. Sometimes people do.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. The Black Power movement from the 60s, we now see in the RBG hip hop movement. The conscious political rap, which we're going to discuss next week with the likes of Public Enemy, X-Clan, the Poor Righteous Teachers, KRS-One. We're going to break down those lyrics and those songs. And I'm going to send you like a workbook, if you will, of a lot of positive, culturally conscious lyrics. And we're going to break down those rhyme structures. And then we're going to start working on you writing your own conscious, cultural, political reality raps, okay? I know it's hard to see these videos when I play them through here, but I want you, after we're done, I'm going to email you these, or you can click on them, open them up now, and where we're done, you can watch them later. But I want you to watch this video, the very first one. It's a group called the Beat Junkies. Is who I thought Nana and Jacob was playing, but I was playing it actually. And the Beat Junkies are a group of DJs that are of African descent and of Filipino descent. And the thing about Filipinos, the very first chief of the Philippines was African, right? So when we read Runoko Rashidi's work of the African presence in early Asia, you will find that a lot of Asian countries and villages was actually formed, and the first chiefs were African. But the Beat Junkies have created something called an Institute of Sound. It's a school. And it's a school to teach DJing because we say that the DJ is the backbone of hip hop. And it's like a 3-minute video. I would like you all to kind of check that out when we're done. And just look at that video. And I'll make sure that I send those links to you in case you can't save those in time because we're almost done here. And as well, watch the Public Enemy one and what they talk about, that video, Fight the Power. Hip-hop activism. The young people actually get together to give hip-hop a voice that show that it can be used for good, it can be used for positivity. As you see here, the DJ had a backdrop, no youth in prisons. They had the very best boycott of prisons campaign. Because we know a lot of our people ended up in the industrial prison complex, and we can't fall for those traps. Here's some other ideas and images of hip hop activism by young people. All the way in Guatemala, they are holding a hip hop activist reflections. Yes, like the Black Eyed Peas, Noah, exactly. Reflections on current challenges facing Guatemala. Here's a hip hop is dead, but long live hip hop poetry book by E. Stanley Richardson. And I'm sure Aina and the Jacob can appreciate the hip hop vegan movement, right? Right? When they're spreading the awareness of eating right and holistic eating, okay? And hip hop is also very interested in the re-education of our people, because many of our youth through the public school system are being misoriented and miseducated, as we all know. Well, we don't deal with them, right? All right. I know it's 2 o'clock, but I gave you all some homework. And I want you all to tell me a little bit about the people that we gave you to research. So if we can do that within the next 10 minutes, can we do that, Anna? Okay. So it was my job to tell you about Rosa Clemente. And I'm not going to read all of this, but basically, Rosa Clemente is a Puerto Rican sister that says she is Black because there's no race called Puerto Rican, there's no race called Hispanic, and there's no race called Latino or Latinx, okay? She said, we are people that are mixed from the Taino people and Africans that were brought to those parts of the world. The only difference between a Black person in Puerto Rico and a Black person in Virginia is a boat stop, right? So she is also a political activist. She ran for the vice presidency when everybody was voting for Obama, with the sister Cynthia McKinney was running for president and representing the Green Party. Rosa Clemente was her running mate as the vice president. 2 powerful sisters was running for president not that long ago, right? But a lot of us got caught up in who they gave us, right? Yes, it was a good image to see the Black family in the White House, but just imagine if Cynthia McKinney and Rosa Clemente were the president and vice president. Oh my goodness, we would turn the United States upside down, right? She is a hip hop activist. She started as the co-founding coordinator of the very first National Hip Hop Political Convention. She is also co-founded Reach Hip Hop Coalition, and she organizes a lot of hip hop grassroots activities throughout the whole United States. She is a very powerful sister. If you go on YouTube and just Google Rosa Clemente, she's very powerful. Okay, real quick. Whose job was it to tell us about MC Sha-Rock? I think it was 2 people might have had her. Yes, Asasie and Aina was going to tell us about Sha-Rock. So, and this time we'll let the youth go first, and whatever makes.
You know
yes?
what I can do? I can. I have her image up, so maybe while she's talking, I can just show it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Sha-Rock was part of the Funky 4+1. She was the first female MC, and her group, the Funky 4+1, were the first group to be on national TV. They were also the first group to put graffiti on their clothes. Sha-Rock used to be a B-girl, and her favorite hip-hop moment was when her group became the first group to be on national TV. They were invited on to Saturday Night Live by Deborah Wilson from the band Blondie. She liked Sha-Rock's group because they had a woman, and she wanted the world to experience that.
Evo. Gabo. Anything you wanted to add, Aina?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. First female MC of hip hop and innovator of the B girl and fly girl cultures.
All right. All right. Who's next? Let's see. Who did we have? Ninth Wonder. Fawohodie?
Hip hop culture. Ninth Wonder began his career as the main producer for the group Little Brother. In January 2009, Ninth Wonder announced plans to start two independent record label. Ninth Wonder was appointed artist and residence by Chancellor of North Carolina Central University and began teaching a hip-hop history class in the music department. This was in 2007. In 2010, Ninth Wonder became a music professor at Duke University, teaching a class called Sampling Soul, because he was known for producing hip-hop soul music. Later, Ninth Wonder became a W.E.B. Du Bois hip-hop fellow at Harvard. He went on to teach and lecture on hip-hop music at University of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and other colleges and universities.
Mope, mope.
Ryan has the last poets.
The last poets were rappers in the civil rights era. After the death of Martin Luther King, the last poets were born. The last poets reflected our elders that embraced and tried to teach. The members of the last poets are David Nelson, Guideline King, and Abdomen Oyelele. The civil rights era. The last poets were born on the anniversary of Malcolm X's birthday, May 19th, 1968, in Marcus Garvey Park. In 1970s, the last poets released their first album, Nobody Was Ready. But most importantly, they made you think that they kept you connected or on a revolutionary level. The Last Poets is the name for several groups of poets and musicians. The name is taken from a poem by the Southern African revolutionary poet Chepetus Chegosete, who believed he was in the last era of the poetry before guns would take over.
Mope, mope.
It shows that even though we say hip hop started in 1973, there were many aspects of rappers and rapping and poets before the so-called birth date of hip hop. That was a great, Zion. All right, who had Dondi?
That was me.
Adaya.
Dondi was born April 7th, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York. His real name is Donald Joseph White. He is considered one of the most influential graffiti artists in the history of the movement. In his early life, he was the youngest of 5 children and was of African American and Italian descent. In the mid-1970s, graffiti became a serious part of his life. Dondi pioneered many of the styles and techniques that are still being used by modern graffiti artists today. He died of AIDS at the age of 37 on October 2nd, 1998.
Wow. All right, good research, good research, good research. Okay, who had the dead prez? Was it Noah?
I think it was JP.
It was JP. Is JP still with us? Because I saw his thing going in and out. He arrived, it left. He was kind of maybe having some connection problems, maybe. JP no longer with us?
He's not here. I looked on the attendees list. Wait, no, he's here.
Oh. He said, I don't think you can hear me. You got to hit your microphone icon.
He had it on, but we still couldn't hear him.
Okay.
A minute ago.
I could do what? I could turn his mic on?
I think he might be having some issues, some connection issues. And he's
I think he's having some, because he's out.
But he's coming on through the phone now. I see him.
Okay. Okay, he's going to call through the phone. JP? JP, why would you rise, oldest son? That was here the other couple weeks ago? Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay. So, well, I don't know if he's going to make it in. Let's give him a chance to. Who had Kool Herc?
Kadir did, and I know someone else did, but
Me Paucho, Baba.
Yes.
I can maybe about four more minutes or so that I need to move on to the other class.
Yes. Okay, so Kadir, did you have Kool Herc?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead real quick.
He is credited with helping originate hip-hop music in the early 1970s in Bronx, New York. Known as the founder of hip-hop and father of hip-hop. He threw the first hip-hop party, then extra people with equipment came and watched DJ Kool Herc, then joined in, and there was now a concert. Using the same 2 turntables set up of disco DJs, Campbell used 2 copies of the same record to elongate the break. This breakbeat DJing used hard funk, and records with Latin percussion formed the basis of hip-hop music. Campbell's announcement and exhortations to dancers helped lead to the syncopated rhythm spoken accompaniments known as rapping. He called his dancers break boys and break girls, or simply beat boys and beat girls. Campbell's DJ style was quickly taken up by figures such as African Bambaataa and Grandmaster Flash. Unlike them, he never made the move into commercially recording hip-hop in its earliest years.
All right, yay, both. Okay, so in the interest of time, maybe we can talk about Dead Prez when we come back. I think that would actually be very, very relative to the topics of cultural and political rap, and Dead Prez fits right in there. So let's do them on next week, next Sunday.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Notice, yes, I hear you.
All right, I got it.
Yes. Look, hey, JP, we're going to go ahead and save it for next week, okay, because we're running out of time. And so let's make sure you keep that because Dead Prayers really fits into the topic for next week, okay?
Okay.
All right. And notice DJ Kool Herc's nice African outfit there. Here, the brothers represent. So thank you all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Everybody's good. Did you learn something today?
We learned a lot. Medasi Pa.
Yes, yes. All right. So it's my pleasure. We'll come back next week. Get ready to get your writing on because we're going to actually work on some rhyme structures and concentrate on the lyrics of the songs that actually contributed to me thinking the way I think and being exposed to the culture and the politics that I've been exposed to. So that's going to be fun and it's going to be intense and we're going to really get down to some lyrics. And I'm going to make sure you all have the lyrics that are cleaned up, ain't I? And but the message is really important. So Madasi P, y'all have a good weekend. Have a good week. Learn, behave, listen to your parents. I see y'all next Sunday.
Habibi Fawohodie.
Peace.